Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast Sports. I'm Michael Fiumefreddo, and as you've probably heard me say 1,000 times now, it's the only show for the fans, by the fans. Might sound a little bit sick. We got the Chi-Fi cold going around here at the house. It's not COVID. We already checked. We're all negative. We're staying safe, keeping ourselves isolated, trying to do the best we can, but thankfully no outbreaks so far, and knock on wood, it doesn't happen anytime soon. Big news coming to start the week, and after a lot of speculation on what the mitochondria means, or what all these crazy Peloton profile descriptions and the Instagram and Twitter posts, J.J. Watt signs with the Arizona Cardinals. The 31-year-old three-time Defensive Player of the Year will now team up with his former Houston Texan teammate DeAndre Hopkins, along with quarterback Kyler Murray and an already stacked defense that includes some big names. Got to talk about Patrick Peterson at corner and Budda Baker there as well in the secondary. Then you got guys like Chandler Jones and Isaiah Simmons in that front seven that J.J. Watt's really going to make an impact of being there. It's a 2-year deal worth $31 million, and the Cardinals now look like a contender in a very stacked NFC West division. But the big question on everyone's mind is, how far is this move going to take Arizona? You know, they were 8-8 last year. They just missed out on the playoffs. Very tough schedule. They won a few games late, big time against the Buffalo Bills. You talk about the Hail Mary throw to DeAndre Hopkins. But you add a guy like J.J. Watt, and like I said, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year awards. Not many players have done that in their careers. But J.J. Watt is not that same player, unfortunately. And those awards were way back, maybe like 5-6 years ago. He's dealt with a lot of injuries since then. He's sat out a few years. 2018, he had a very good year where he put up a full 16-game slate, a bunch of sacks. But in the years after that, he's had 4 in 2019 where he was hurt, and 5 last season when he played the full season. I question his durability a lot as well. Like I said, he's been injured multiple times. He's had a few surgeries. Is this with the same J.J. Watt we know and love that's been a force to be reckoned with on the lines in years past? But in terms of where this takes Arizona, I could see them maybe sneaking into the playoffs. He can get them to win a game or two. Definitely going to make a presence on the defense against those weaker teams and maybe even help them out in some of the division games where we talk about they're playing a very tough schedule. I compared, and I've talked about this a few times, I admitted that I was pretty much wrong on Arizona last season. I really thought they'd flame out. They wouldn't be a superstar caliber team the way they were, but they just missed out on the playoffs. I saw them maybe winning 4 or 5 games. But I don't know if that's going to be the same scenario this season. I think they can definitely make the playoffs, maybe win 9-10 games, especially with 7 teams making it. But I've compared this team multiple times to what the Cleveland Browns are doing. And it's they sign all these superstars, these big names, these guys that are really going to sell tickets, make a culture change. It's going to get them in the headlines. But when it really comes down to it, how well are these guys going to play? We talk about Odell Beckham, who may or may not be a Cleveland Brown in the next couple of years. We talk about other guys on that team. They never really upgraded the key positions like the offensive line, which needed a lot of work. And mainly even the defense as well is kind of flamed out in the first couple of years. But I've compared this team to the Browns just because I think they're doing the exact same thing, where it's bring in the big names, get a guy that's going to make someone want to draft your guy number 1 overall in fantasy like DeAndre Hopkins, or give a guy to Kyler Murray that he's going to be able to throw to. But they're just surrounding him with big-name, washed-up, old veteran players at this point. And that's not going to take you to a Super Bowl the way Kansas City and Tampa Bay have done it in years past. I think there's a way around this, though. They can definitely turn this team into a contender with the right free agency period and the right draft. I talked about their offensive line. It did a lot better than expected last season thanks to guys like DJ Humphries. But the interior of the offensive line still isn't great there. The run game hasn't really been there for them as well. So I think you really focus on the offensive line, maybe bring in another wide receiver or even a running back in the draft if you can find a steal late in the game. But I think these moves can definitely help a team that's playing in a tough division with the Rams now a threat, San Francisco a season removed from making it to the Super Bowl, Seattle still a force to be reckoned with, won the division last year. But I can see this team maybe winning 10 games, getting into the playoffs. Maybe a wild card win, but I don't see it any further than that. Sticking in the NFC West, though, I talked about this on my Instagram earlier last week, and if you're not following already, at C2C Sports MF, and we've grown pretty well in that category. We're up to 70 followers now. It started a few weeks back. But I talked about Russell Wilson because there was some news or rumors floating around that he could be on the trade block. Now, Russell Wilson never formally requested a trade. We definitely knew there was some unhappiness there because of the way they've been treating him health-wise in terms of bringing guys to protect him. The defense this year was atrocious, but he's still getting it done. He was my early pick to win MVP and kind of choked at the end of the season, but other than that, still had a great year, made the playoffs. But Russell Wilson came out and said, hey, I never really requested a trade, but if I were to, I'd want to go play for the Bears. I'd want to go play for the Saints. Maybe the Cowboys or even the Raiders look pretty intriguing to me. But for a guy like Russell Wilson, who's been to a Super Bowl, has the talent and such to get back, I don't know why he'd want to go to any of these teams. And the one that really makes the most sense, and I'll talk about why it's a problem in a second, but the New Orleans Saints. They're in cap purgatory right now. They're $100 million over the salary cap. They're paying Alvin Kamara. They're paying Michael Thomas. They're paying Cameron Jordan on defense. They're probably paying some offensive linemen, and they're going to have to figure out what they're doing at quarterback. If they want to keep Jameis Winston, they want to rock with Taysom Hill, you're going to have to pay those guys a pretty big contract as well. But I think a Russell Wilson trade could really get them out of it. You look at what they can offer. They can offer up some picks. But you probably won't be at the top of the draft if you have a guy like Russell Wilson and Alvin Kamara in that backfield. But you can offer a guy like Michael Thomas, maybe, star wide receiver, send him over to Seattle, probably build one of the best receiving cores in the National Football League history. Maybe you send him over an aging vet that you're paying a large amount like Cameron Jordan. Maybe bolster up Seattle's defense. But in terms of what this means for Russell Wilson, I think he gets the offensive line he rightfully deserves. The Saints finished 8th best in Pro Football Focus's rankings this past season. So you get a top 10 offensive line. You got some weapons like Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook, maybe Michael Thomas if they don't trade him. You got a great coach in Sean Payton. And you got a team that just wins. Saints are always in the playoffs. They don't really perform that well in the playoffs, but they get there. I mean, you're not going to be playing for a bottom feeder like the Jets or the Jaguars. You're going to a very good team. And I think Russell Wilson's a quarterback that can really put them over the top if need be. And I say that New Orleans is the best fit. It's not the perfect fit for a guy like Russ, but it's better than the other options, he says. The Cowboys, I mean, do you really want to go to that team that isn't willing to pay Dak Prescott? When your contract's up, you're going to have to deal with the same problems? What about Las Vegas? I talked about them having so many guys on the hot seat that does it really matter? You could just be another name added to the list. And then the Bears crossed my mind because I've been saying this is the dream destination for Deshaun Watson. And I've said that for many, like we've talked about this before. They're a team that's a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. They're a team that's got a very good defense that they can easily give up guys for. And this is a team that made the playoffs last season. So what's the problem? Now, I'll start with Deshaun Watson and why I think he's the best fit is because Deshaun Watson is happy anywhere other than the Houston Texans. He could play for the CFL or even some bottom feeder team like the Jets or the Jaguars, and he'd be ecstatic. The the Texans could probably come up to him tomorrow and be like, "Hey, we're shipping you off to Jacksonville. They're giving us a first round pick in return, and you're gonna have to live in a shack on the beach." Deshaun Watson would be like, "Pack my bags, I'm going." You could say, "Deshaun, you're getting traded to the Jets, but you got to live on the street. I'll be there." I think he's going to be comfortable playing in any system other than the Houston Texans system. And that's why Chicago makes a perfect fit. Plus also the fact that he's going to be cheap. And look at what the Colts got for Carson Wentz from a team, the Eagles, that were trying to move on from him. They only had to give up a second-round pick and maybe a first next year, which is probably going to happen. But it wasn't a break-the-bank situation for Indy, and they didn't do that. They got the quarterback they needed at the right price. So I think Chicago, they're a quarterback away from contention. They can maybe give up one guy on the defense. They still got 10 other guys that'll play great. You can throw in a couple draft picks. Not going to really matter. It's not going to be a long-term commitment to draft capital of the Houston Texans. And once again, you get Deshaun Watson. So why not go after Russ? Well, it's because it's the complete opposite with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson wants to go to a team that's going to compete. He doesn't want to leave Seattle. So he might be unhappy saying, "Hey, you're going to Chicago to play for the Bears now." I don't think Russell Wilson will have the same energy that Deshaun Watson would for getting traded and playing for a new team unless he formally asks for a trade. Russ is going to cost them way too much. He's going to have to probably be a few firsts for the next 3 or 4 years, maybe even more. Maybe have to give up a defender, some guys on the team. And the way it looks, I was talking to a Bears fan about this earlier this week, and he was telling me their offensive line isn't great. They're worse than what the Seahawks got. Their two top weapons are going to be Darnell Mooney, who had a pretty good rookie season, nothing incredibly special, and then a guy Javon Wims, who has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons, starting fights with Saints players, dropping wide open touchdowns in the playoffs, and then Allen Robinson could be on his way out. So you're going to take Russell Wilson, a guy who's got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, a group of tight ends, a team that he's been to the Super Bowl with. You're going to ship him off to Chicago. Give him Darnell Mooney and Javon Wims. Maybe Allen Robinson, but probably not. And you're going to spend 3 to 4 picks on a guy that doesn't really want to be there. So if I were Chicago, I'd target Deshaun Watson. If I were the Saints, I'd target Russell Wilson. I don't think Russell Wilson will be traded. I think he'll play in a Seahawks uniform this season. But it's definitely something to think about. I mean, who knows? Maybe he does come draft day. He wants to put himself on the market, and then a team can maybe trade for him. Free agency is still a couple of weeks away, though, and I want to shift over to some basketball because my hometown team, not the team I necessarily root for, but the New York Knicks, they're the talk of the town right now. And as of right now, the Knicks are 18-17. Top 4 in the Eastern Conference right now. They're having their best start since 2012. And they have an all-star in Julius Randle, of all people. So, what's up with the Knicks right now? Are they a new title contender that just came out of nowhere? I don't think we're that far yet. I think this team is still a couple years away. Let's not forget they're playing in the Eastern Conference right now, and I'm going to call it the Least instead of the East because they're not as good. I mean, the Dallas Mavericks have virtually the same record. They're 17-16 as of tonight when they took down the Orlando Magic, but they would be in the same scenario. The Mavericks aren't even in the playoffs right now. So definitely have to look into the level of play. They're doing much better on the Eastern side of things than they are when they play teams from the West. But out of all those things, I think Knicks fans, for the first time in a while, you have something to look forward to in the future. And it's really, what's shocking is it's their second choice guys for all the Knicks fans out there that are really stepping up and making the difference. I talked about Julius Randle being an all-star. He was the guy that everyone was devastated when they didn't get Kyrie, they didn't get Kevin Durant, they went shipped off to their next-door neighbor, the Brooklyn Nets. And Knicks fans were kind of complaining. It's like, after all that talk, we got Julius Randle. Well, now you got an all-star, so stop complaining, I guess. It's other guys, too. The same year, they wanted Zion Williamson with the number 1 pick. Got no lottery luck, ended up at number 3, and took R.J. Barrett. R.J. Barrett's really the second option to Julius Randle, who's leading the team in points, rebounds, and assists right now. You got other guys like Elfrid Payton, who started every game he's played so far and is doing pretty well. And then you had D. Rose for some point guard depth as well. Other guys are stepping up that they drafted. Obi Toppin's still not there yet, although he will be participating in the dunk contest. You got Emmanuel Quickley, who was a late-round choice, as well as Mitchell Robinson a few years back. Those guys are all making an impact, and down the line, 2 to 3 years from now, when they're all comfortable playing with each other, this team could be a force to be reckoned with. And as a New Yorker, I think that's what sports fans in New York need. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week's show. Friday, we're going to have a little bit of an All-Star Weekend preview. We're going to talk about the player draft on Thursday. It's going to be LeBron going up against Kevin Durant, who's just drafting the team. He won't be playing in it. We'll talk about the skills challenge that'll be played before the game, and then the halftime dunk contest as well. And I'll give you who I think wins this year's All-Star game. Thanks for tuning into this edition of Coast to Coast Sports, the only show for the fans, by the fans. I'm Michael Fiumefreddo, signing off for today's episode. We'll see you Friday.